Lesson 110, Algebra, Equations and Functions. By the end of this lesson, you're going to be able to write a function table, and you're going to be able to write an equation from a function table. Our vocabulary for today is function, function rule, function table, domain, and range. So you're probably wondering, what exactly is this whole function thing? Here's what you need to understand. For any number that I put in, I have some sort of rule that I'm going to do to it. I'm going to add 4, I'm going to multiply by 10. It doesn't matter. I'm going to have some sort of rule. But for every one number that I put in, I'm going to get exactly one number out on the other side after I've applied the function rule. So what it says is a relationship that gives exactly one output value for each input value is called a function. So every time you put one number in here, I'm going to get exactly one number out here after I've applied whatever function rule I'm going to have. And the operation performed on the input is given by the function rule. So this is the operation here, the thing that I'm going to do, add 4, multiply by 10, that is known as the function rule here in the middle. You put a number in, you apply the function rule, you get a number out. So let's put this to practice a little bit. So let's say I have the number 2. And my function rule is I'm going to multiply by 2. So that means I'm going to go 2 times 2. So after I multiply 2 times 2, I get 4. There's my output here. My input is 2, my output is 4. Maybe let's say I put in a 3. So that means my function rule is I'm going to go 3 times 2, that's my rule. 3 times 2 is 6. So if I put a 3 into the function machine, I'm going to get a 6 out. One last example. If I put in a 4 and I apply the function rule, that means multiply the 4 times 2, I'm going to get an 8 out. So you put in a 4, you get out an 8. The inputs are usually known as the domain, and the outputs are known as the range. So inputs are domains, outputs are range. Let's do an example. So in this example, Mark saves $20 each month. We need to make a function table to show his saving after 1, 2, 3, and 4 months, and then we need to identify the domain and range. So we need to do two things here. First, we're going to make a function table to show his savings after 1, 2, 3, and 4 months, and the second thing we're going to do is we're going to identify the domain and range. So first thing, we're going to make a function table. Second thing, we're going to identify the domain and range. So I'm going to set this up the same way. I'm going to have an input. I'm going to have a function rule. And we're going to have some sort of output. So that means, and our inputs are going to be after 1, 2, 3, and 4 months. And our function rule is, what is Mark doing every single month? Oh, he's going to save $20. So that means we're going to multiply by 20. And our inputs are right here, 1, 2, 3, and 4 months. So month 1. I input a 1, I'm going to multiply it by 20, so that means 1 times 20. And our output is going to be, Mark has $20. Month number 2, that means our function rule says we're going to multiply by 20, so I'm going to take the input 20 and multiply it by 20. And 20 times 2 is 40. That means Mark now has $40. Month number 3, we put in a 3, we multiply it by 20, we get out $60. That means after 3 months, Mark has $60. And our final month, 4, that the question is asking us about, we're going to take 4, we're going to multiply it by the function rule of multiplying by 20. 4 times 20 is $80. That means here we have our function table. We put in these 4 months, we multiply each one of those months by 20, and over here is our output. So that means after 4 months, Mark's going to have $80. The second part of the question is that we need to identify the domain and range. Remember back in this first example that I gave you, I explained that the input is the domain and the output is the range. That means all we have to do is identify the domain, and I'm going to say domain, and you use these special little brackets that have little points in the middle. They're a little tricky to learn how to draw at first. And I'm going to list my numbers over here from the input. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm going to put one of these special little brackets on the end. And I'm going to do the same thing for range. I'm going to say range, and I'm going to use one of these special little sets of brackets, and I'm going to list these numbers over here because the outputs are known as the range. So that's 20, 40, 60, and 80. And then I'm going to use that special little set of brackets. So now I've written out the domain and the range. We made the table, so we did the first part. We made the function table. We did the second part. We identified the domain and range. Let's try another example, or let's take a look at something different. Here it says that functions are often written as equations with two variables, one to represent the input and one to represent the output. So here's what I've done. I've actually written an equation or a function for our last example. And what I'm saying here is that the input is right here. X is the input, and the Y over here is the output. This time we have it written as an equation or as a function. So here's the function rule right here, the multiply it by 20. So if you take 20 and you multiply it by any one of our inputs, you're going to get the output Y. And this is known as the function itself. So here's another example for us to take a look at. It says an armadillo sleeps 19 hours each day. We need to write an equation using two variables to show the relationship between the number of hours H and an armadillo sleeps in D days. So basically, we need to figure out what the input is, what the output is, and what the function rule is, and we need to be able to write the relationship as an equation or as a function. So we know that an armadillo sleeps 19 hours each day. And we know that we're going to use the two variables, and it says H for hours and D for days. And we need to show the relationship between H hours and D days. And then we know that an armadillo sleeps a total of 19 hours every single day. Well, 19 is the function. That's the thing that's going to happen every single time. So that means that we're going to multiply by 19 here inside the function machine. And we need to figure out what's the input going to be and what's the output going to be. Well, we're going to put in the number of days. We don't know how many days, but we're going to input in the number of days, and on the output we're going to get how many hours in all the armadillo sleeps. So in other words, our equation is going to look like 19 times however many however many days the armadillo sleeps, is going to tell us how many hours he sleeps. And now we've written our equation. So let's say we want to figure out how many, now we're going to apply our function. And let's say we want to figure out how many hours does an armadillo sleep if he sleeps for 4 days. So let's see. I just said that the armadillo is going to sleep for 4 days. So that means here where we have D, I'm going to be inputting the number 4. So I'm going to have the number 4 here. Or I'm going to have the number 4 here. And we're going to take 4 and we're going to multiply it by 19. Or take 4 and multiply it by 19. And 4 times 19 is 76. So that means over here on the end, you're going to get out 76 or 76 hours. So if you are an armadillo, after 4 days, you would have slept a total of 76 hours. That's all there is to functions. You have a function rule, something that you're going to do every single time. You put some sort of number in, you apply the function rule, and you get some sort of output out. You can either organize the information in a table like this, where the domain is the input and the range is the output, or you can write a function equation like this, and we can apply it to, for example, our armadillos wherever they just went. Oh, here's our armadillos. You can apply it to the armadillos here in this example.